So bored. Why is that girl taking so long? My world is empty without her. Morning, Miss Diligent. Look at your cheeks, they're round like mochi.
Stop bothering me.
Working hard for the future of the nation again today?
Move aside, Kurosawa-senpai.
So fierce. You'll get old fast, Akiyama.
The early summer morning wind felt soft against Akiyama Yuki's face. The pedaling of her bicycle produced a constant rhythm, a monotonous melody that accompanied her every day on her way to Fujioka High School. Her uniform was neat, the tie perfectly placed on her pristine white shirt collar, and her bangs were arranged perfectly above her eyebrows. For her, every day was a precise step towards her goal, graduating with the best grades. However, that precision always faltered about 20 meters before the school gate. There, leaning against the concrete wall with a posture that suggested a god-level boredom, the tall, all too familiar figure was already standing. The top button of his shirt was undone. His tie hung loose like a useless rope, and his slightly long black hair looked messy, tousled by the wind. Kurosawa Kenji. Yuki sighed softly, her grip on the bicycle's handlebars tightening slightly. Why does he always have to be here? She wondered for the umpteenth time. As if he could hear her complaint, Kenji pushed himself off the wall and casually stepped right into Yuki's bicycle path, forcing her to stop abruptly. Yuki's foot came down on the asphalt with a small, annoyed stomp.
Morning, Miss Diligent.
Kenji greeted with his signature cheeky grin. His sharp eyes looked at Yuki with a playful glint.
Working hard for the future of the nation again today?
Yuki's face was as flat as an unerased blackboard. She stared straight ahead, avoiding eye contact with her senior.
Move aside, Kurosawa-senpai.
Her voice was cold and formal. The use of the senpai honorific wasn't out of respect, but rather a wall she was building. An affirmation that their relationship was merely that of a junior and a senior who happened to cross paths. Kenji let out a small laugh, his raspy voice clear in the morning air. He was completely unfazed. Instead of moving, he leaned forward, resting his hands on the basket of Yuki's bicycle. Their faces were now less than a handspan apart.
So fierce.
He whispered. Yuki could smell the faint scent of mint on his breath.
You'll get old fast, Akiyama.
The use of her family name felt overly familiar to Yuki's ears. Her cheeks started to feel warm, whether from anger or embarrassment. She didn't like being the center of attention, and Kurosawa Kenji was a walking attention magnet. A few other students passing by started to glance in their direction, whispering, "Enough." Yuki didn't have time for this morning's drama. Without another word, she shoved her handlebars to the side, forcing Kenji to step back slightly, and then quickly walked her bicycle past him. She didn't look back, though she could feel Kenji's gaze fixed on her back. As she parked her bike and walked towards the school building, she could hear her own heartbeat, a little faster than usual. She smoothed down her uniform, as if wanting to smooth out the irritation in her heart as well. Patience, Yuki, she told herself. For the grades. For graduation. 3 years isn't that long. She entered her classroom, sat at her desk by the window, and took out a textbook. The school bell rang loudly a few moments later, signaling the start of the first period. And just like every other morning, the disturbance at the school gate dissolved into the lines of mathematical formulas and kanji characters before her, forgotten for a while, until the next morning arrived. A small miracle happened that morning. The figure of Kurosawa Kenji was nowhere to be seen on his unofficial throne near the school gate. There was no cheeky grin, no playful comments, no mischievous hand stopping her bicycle. Yuki could pass through the gate smoothly, feeling a relief so pure she almost smiled at the school security guard. The air felt fresher, the sky brighter, and her steps toward her classroom felt lighter. Today was going to be a peaceful day. Class went on peacefully. For the first time in weeks, Yuki didn't have to spend the first 10 minutes of class calming her irritated heartbeat. She could focus completely, absorbing every explanation from the teacher, without the annoying shadow of a certain senior disturbing her concentration. When the lunch bell rang, Yuki's sense of optimism peaked. The first-year and third-year buildings were separated by a wide sports field. The cafeteria was the only neutral territory, and with hundreds of students flooding into it, The probability of running into someone specific was very low. Please let today be truly peaceful. She prayed internally as she walked towards the cafeteria. The cafeteria was bustling as usual. The aromas of ramen, curry, and fried foods mixed into one. Yuki picked up her tray, filling it with her standard menu: rice, grilled fish, and stir-fried vegetables. A meal that gave her energy without making her drowsy. After paying, her eyes scanned the entire room, searching for a strategic location. She found it, a single table in the farthest corner, near a window overlooking the quiet school garden. The perfect spot. With a sense of satisfaction, she sat down and placed her tray on the table. This was her reward for the day. A quiet lunch, alone, without interruptions. She picked up her chopsticks, just about to take her first bite of rice when a commotion from the entrance shattered the silence in her head. Loud laughter, dragging footsteps, and names being called out in a way that was more like shouting. That kind of energy belonged to only one group in this school. Yuki's heart skipped a beat. She didn't dare to turn her head, hoping in her heart that the group would take a table on the other side of the cafeteria. She looked down, pretending to be intensely focused on her food. But she felt a pair of eyes watching her. Slowly, she lifted her head. Across the sea of students, Kurosawa Kenji stood among his friends. And he was staring straight at Yuki. A mischievous smile, she knew all too well, slowly spread across her senior's face. Yuki's prayer had just been flatly rejected by the universe. Kenji said something to his friends, then walked through the crowd, straight towards her table. His stride was casual, as if he owned the place. Yuki's entire being was now screaming, on alert. Without asking for permission, Kenji placed his tray, which only held a bottle of milk and a melon pan, on Yuki's table, then pulled out the chair opposite her and sat down casually.
Well, look what we have here.
Kenji said, his voice filled with amusement as he glanced at the contents of Yuki's tray.
The menu of a future Nobel laureate. No room for anything tasty, huh?
Yuki's chopsticks froze in midair. Her face began to feel hot. Several pairs of eyes at the surrounding tables were now fixed on them.
None of your business, senpai.
Yuki hissed, her voice strained with annoyance.
Of course it's my business.
Kenji replied, leaning back in his chair, looking thoroughly entertained. He opened the wrapper of his melon pan.
If you faint from malnutrition, who am I going to bother at the gate tomorrow?
That was the last straw. That sentence was like a lit match. The combination of embarrassment from being a spectacle and his infuriating logic made Yuki's appetite vanish instantly. She put down her chopsticks with a sharp clatter.
I'm done,
she said coldly. She stood up, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Without another glance at Kenji, she picked up her tray, its contents diminished by only a single bite, and walked quickly towards the tray return area. She could feel Kenji's gaze on her back, probably accompanied by a triumphant smile. Placing the tray down a bit roughly, Yuki clenched her fists.
He's truly a pest, a nuisance. I wish he would just disappear from the face of the earth.
That wish felt so strong and sincere. The peaceful day she had longed for was completely ruined, and all that was left now was an overflowing sense of irritation. The wish Yuki had made full of irritation yesterday felt like a curse this morning. As she approached the school gate, she did so with full vigilance, her eyes automatically searching for the familiar tall figure in his usual spot. But the spot was empty. The concrete wall was just an ordinary concrete wall, quiet and boring. Kurosawa Kenji wasn't there. There was relief, of course, but this time it felt different. Yesterday, the relief had felt like a victory. Today, it felt more like an emptiness. Yuki shook her head slowly, trying to shake off the strange feeling. This is what you wanted, isn't it? A peaceful day. She pedaled her bicycle through the gate, forcing herself to feel that peace. The first period began. Then the second. Everything went on as normal. Too normal. There was no leftover irritation from a morning interaction that she needed to suppress. Her mind was clear, yet for some reason, she found it hard to focus. Her ears seemed to be on constant alert, waiting for a noisy sound from the hallway that might signal Kenji's presence. When lunchtime arrived, the strange feeling intensified. Yuki walked to the cafeteria, the place that had been the silent witness to her irritation yesterday. With a slight hesitation, she once again picked up her healthy meal and walked towards the single table in the corner. The table was empty, as if waiting for her. She sat down, and the silence immediately ambushed her. There was no loud laughter from the entrance. No brazen figure approaching her table. No cynical comments about her food. Nothing. Just the general hum of the cafeteria, which felt distant. This was the peace she had hoped for. She could eat quietly. But every bite tasted bland. Her eyes unconsciously kept glancing towards the entrance. A reflex she immediately regretted. What for? Hoping that nuisance would show up? She sneered internally. She finished her meal faster than usual. Simply because she couldn't stand the silence at her own table. For the rest of the day, that empty feeling followed her like a shadow. During group discussions, she was mostly quiet. When the teacher was explaining, her mind drifted, returning to their last interaction. Kenji's cheeky grin, the playful look in his eyes, and his infuriating words.
If you faint from malnutrition, who am I going to bother at the gate tomorrow?
Why did that sentence keep replaying in her head? The final school bell finally rang. Yuki packed her bag more slowly than usual. She walked down the corridor, past the announcement board, towards the bicycle parking area. Her steps paused for a moment as she passed the spot near the gate, where Kenji usually leaned. The spot was just an empty patch of pavement. It looked wrong. It looked strange. On the way home, the rhythm of her pedaling was no longer calming. Her mind was filled with one big question that spun around endlessly. I should be happy, right? My prayer was answered. He's not here. But why? Does it feel like something is missing? Her pedaling slowed. She stared at the asphalt road ahead without really seeing it. Why does it feel so lonely? That night, for the first time, Akiyama Yuki realized that the silence she had always longed for actually had a sound. And that sound, somehow, kept screaming the name Kurosawa Kenji. On the second day of Kurosawa Kenji's absence, Yuki convinced herself that her senior probably just had the flu. It was understandable. The weather had been unpredictable. That morning, as she approached the school gate, there was a slight anticipation in her heart, hoping to see that figure back at his post, perhaps with a mask covering his cheeky face. But the spot remained empty. The disappointment she felt was sharp and undeniable. That day, all her senses were working overtime. Every time a group of third-year students passed in the hallway, her head would automatically turn. Every time she heard a loud, raspy laugh from a distance, her heart would flutter for a moment, before realizing it wasn't the voice she was looking for. The school, which usually felt crowded, now seemed to have so much empty space. On the third day, Yuki's patience ran out. The anxiety that was initially just a small whisper in her mind had now become a clamorous noise. This was no longer just a strange feeling. This was worry. During the break, she saw one of Kenji's friends. She recognized a boy with light brown hair named Takeda, buying a drink from a vending machine. This was her chance. With her heart pounding, Yuki gathered her courage and approached him.
Excuse me, Takeda-senpai.
Her voice was quieter than she intended. Takeda turned, slightly surprised to see Yuki. A lopsided smile appeared on his face.
Oh, Kurosawa's girl. What's up?
The nickname made Yuki's cheeks instantly flush.
I'm not.
She cut off her protest. That wasn't important right now.
Do you know why Kurosawa-senpai hasn't been in school?
She asked, trying to keep her voice from trembling. Takeda's casual demeanor changed slightly. He shrugged with a gesture that was a little too deliberate.
How should I know? Maybe he's bored. You know how he is.
He answered, then opened his drink can and took a gulp. His eyes avoided Yuki's gaze. Yuki knew Takeda was hiding something, but she couldn't force it out of him. With a quiet mumble of,
Thank you.
she turned away, feeling more anxious than before. The vague answer was far worse than no answer at all. The worry began to crack her fortress of defenses. In history class, the teacher suddenly shot a question at her. Yuki, whose mind was wandering somewhere else entirely, could only blink in confusion. The entire class stared at her. It was the first time that Akiyama Yuki, the model student, couldn't answer a question. Her face turned red with embarrassment, and she spent the rest of the period with her head down. The fourth and fifth days passed in the same pattern. Empty, quiet, and full of question marks. Her world, which usually revolved around class schedules, homework, and exam preparations, now had a new, invisible center of gravity, Kurosawa Kenji. On Friday afternoon, as she was about to go home, she stood for a moment near the school gate. The spot felt so foreign now. A week ago, she had stood here with overflowing irritation, wishing that nuisance would disappear forever. Now, she would give anything to see him leaning against that wall again. 1 week. In 1 week, her neatly ordered world had been turned upside down. While walking her bike home, Akiyama Yuki had to admit a frightening truth to herself. She no longer just missed her morning annoyance. She was genuinely worried about that very same nuisance. Monday morning. The start of a new week. For Akiyama Yuki, the previous week had felt like a month. Her hope of seeing Kurosawa Kenji had faded into a dull routine of disappointment. This morning, as she pedaled her bike, she no longer even had the energy to hope. She was simply resigned to the emptiness that awaited her. She approached the school gate. Her eyes glanced towards the concrete wall out of habit. A painful reflex she couldn't stop. And her world stopped turning. He was there. Leaning against the wall with the same arrogant style. Kurosawa Kenji was once again occupying his throne. He looked a little thinner. And Yuki could see faint circles under his eyes even from this distance. But it was really him. His slightly messy uniform, his windblown hair, and his sharp gaze. Yuki's bicycle wobbled slightly. She hastily put her foot down on the asphalt to keep her balance. Her breath caught in her throat. The heavy, invisible weight that had been pressing on her chest for the past week suddenly lifted. Vanished completely. All that remained was a wave of relief so powerful it made her knees feel weak. Kenji, seeing her arrive, pushed himself off the wall and stepped into the middle of the road, returning to his old role as her obstacle. That cheeky grin was on his face, though it looked a little forced.
Yo, Miss Diligent.
He greeted, his voice a little hoarse.
Looking listless. Did you miss me?
The question should have been annoying. It should have made Yuki roll her eyes and reply curtly. But Yuki didn't hear it that way. All she saw was the person who had been haunting her thoughts for a week. Now standing real before her. He was okay. He was here. And without realizing it, without being able to control it, Akiyama Yuki's lips parted into a smile. Not a polite, thin smile. Not a cynical one. It was the most genuine smile she had ever given anyone at school. A smile of pure relief that came straight from her heart, lighting up her entire face and making her eyes sparkle. Time seemed to stop. The cheeky grin on Kurosawa Kenji's face froze, then vanished completely. His eyes widened in shock. His jaw went slightly slack. He just stood there, stunned, staring at Yuki as if seeing her for the very first time. For a few long seconds, the always confident senior looked utterly speechless. Slowly, a deep blush began to creep up from his neck to his ears. Seeing his stunned reaction, Yuki finally realized what she had just done. Her smile instantly vanished, replaced by a look of horror. She reflexively covered her mouth with one hand. Her own face felt like it was on fire. What have I just done? She screamed internally. The awkward silence was broken by Kenji. After recovering from his shock, the stunned look on his face changed into something Yuki had never seen before, a triumphant grin. So bright and full of glee.
Hey.
He breathed, his voice full of victory.
So you really did miss me, huh?
He stepped closer, his gaze now feeling more intense, more teasing.
Your smile isn't half bad, Akiyama.
That was her limit. The chain of events, the relief, the accidental smile, Kenji's stunned reaction, and now his teasing, 100 times more effective, was too much for Yuki's nervous system to handle.
Shut up!
She shrieked, her voice strangely high-pitched. With energy born from pure mortification, she pushed her bike past Kenji and pedaled with all her might. Towards the parking area, not daring to look back for even a second. That morning, at the school gate, something had changed forever. The wall of ice between Akiyama, Yuki and Kurosawa Kenji hadn't just cracked, it had just melted. Struck by a smile. On Tuesday morning, Akiyama Yuki walked to school with a feeling she had never experienced before. Her stomach felt like it was filled with 1,000 anxious butterflies. She couldn't sleep all night, constantly replaying the incident at the gate yesterday. Her foolish smile. Kenji's stunned face. His triumphant grin. Now, her biggest question wasn't if Kenji would be at the gate, but what would happen when he was there? What would Kenji say? And more importantly, what should Yuki say? However, when she arrived, the spot was empty again. If last week Kenji's absence had felt empty, this time it felt like a sharp stab of disappointment. Yesterday's magical moment felt like a dream. Had she just imagined it? The warmth that had blossomed in her chest now wilted, replaced by a cold sadness. Kenji didn't come to school that day. He was also absent on Wednesday and Thursday. Yuki's hopes, which had soared so high, now came crashing down to the ground. On Friday, a sudden announcement came over the school speakers. All teachers were required to attend an emergency meeting, and all students were allowed to go home early. Yuki packed her bag listlessly. Going home early wasn't enjoyable when her mood was gloomy. On her way home, Her usual route was closed due to road repairs. Reluctantly, Yuki was forced to take a detour through a residential area she rarely passed through. The alleys here were narrower and quieter. As she pedaled her bike slowly, a rough, raspy laugh echoed from a gap between two old buildings. It wasn't the cheerful laughter of a high school student. This voice sounded heavier, more mature, and had an unpleasant tone. Curious, Yuki slowed her bike and glanced into the narrow alley.